Hello and welcome to the instalment of the Wyfutbol podcast with me, Michael Dryden and Etches Adogru. Today, I'm very pleased to say we are joined by Ally Maloney. Ally is a physio at SE Dons, a club within the Orpington and Bromley District Sunday Football League. That's a long one. Started by
Bit of a
UK
mouthful,
grime
really,
artist.
isn't
Yeah, started by UK grime artist Don Strapsey, and Ally is joining us to talk about life as a physio for a grassroots football club, her entry into the sport and challenges of the role. So that's a long intro for once. Ally, how are you doing today?
Oh, good. Long intro for a short girl, really, isn't it? For a little physio. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you guys? Also, my name sounds awesome in your accent, Michael, I
Ally
must say.
Maloney.
Yeah, it
I've been
sounds
told that when
great.
I record, I sound like almost that I'm not from the northeast, or sound like I'm putting on some other accent. But yeah, Ally Maloney. There we go. That's their
Sounds
time.
great.
So
Good. I might have to get that as my ringtone or something. How are you two guys? You been good?
yeah, not too bad. We're recording a bit of context for people. We're recording the morning after the England Scotland game, so a little bit subdued.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a dinner, so I missed the game. And when
Oh
I was
wow!
when I was in a cab, the cab driver, I thought he said it's 2-0 to England. So I said, "Oh, who scored?" And he just ignored me. So I was like, "Oh, fantastic stuff." Went on my phone, I saw 0-0, so there wasn't very good signal. So I just kept refreshing my phone, being like, "Well, obviously it's 2-0." So I'm waiting for the two goal scorers to pop up. Went into the group chat and they're talking about how Billy Gilmore was playing quite well, and I thought, no, they haven't actually scored. So now, then it went from like euphoria to just fuming in the back of the cab for a while. So that wasn't that brilliant. But apart from that, I'm quite well, Ally. Can't complain too much. Season's over. I'm an Arsenal fan, so often the
Oh,
opening
I'm
of the
so sorry,
podcast.
mate. Thoughts and
Yeah,
prayers. I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. You know
Someone's
what?
got to support them, though, innit? That's the way it works.
At least you got your Thursday. At least you got your Thursday nights back.
Yeah, I mean, that's positive. That's positive.
It's we haven't had a guest for a while that's ganged up on me for supporting Arsenal, and I could see that
Good.
Apologies.
this is what this call
Good.
is going to be like. So
Welcome to the
that
Dons, mate.
so,
You're lucky it's not Big G on here. He'd have shouted at you by now.
yeah, he may well have done. I'm terrified of Big G as well. So to kick things off, Ali, who do you actually support? I don't
I'm a,
ask
We-
enough guests this question, so I think it's good to kick it off with this one.
so I'm a West Ham fan, which is why I'm so perky, because normally I keep very quiet. Like, I support West Ham. But at the moment I can shout it with my full chest. I'm a West Ham fan.
Yeah, West Ham did pretty well this season, in fairness. And I have a really good mate, a very close mate of mine from school. He's a West Ham fan, and yeah, it's one of those ones I've kept quite quiet about their performance this year because I know that obviously they did better than Arsenal. But yeah,
I
they
think
didn't
most
have been.
people did, mate. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's also
Sorry.
true. So that's two jokes in the opening 2 minutes.
It is, yeah.
So
I don't mind it. Don't mind it.
It's going to be a long half an hour, I think, for you, sir.
It is indeed. But no, David Moyes had a brilliant season. Declan Rice, Captain Fantastic, and Mikel Antonio. I find the maddest thing about West Ham where they finished is you just had one out and out striker for the majority of the season.
Yeah.
Which I thought was brilliant. Having said that, though, Yarmolenko's been playing really well in the Euros. But yeah, it was fantastic stuff from West Ham. So congratulations,
Thank
Ali.
you.
I can't
I mean,
criticise
I
you.
sense I'll be regretting Europe next year, and I'm like, how are we bottom of the league? and then we'll sack him in 3 months. Go, we never trusted you ever.
Yeah, they actually didn't though, did they? They just said, "Well, actually, we don't trust you, Moyes."
I'll be fair. I was a skeptic when he first came in, but I'll eat my hat. He's done wonderful, so
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'll
I'm a
take
Sunderland
that.
fan, Ali, so I share that skepticism. But I mean, he's been incredible for West for the Hammers.
Yeah,
So
a part of me doesn't believe it. I'm going to wake up soon and go, "Oh, we're bottom of the league." It's all a lovely dream, but yeah,
Also
it's
as well. Sorry to go off, Belly, but also as well, just as a rule on the show is that we can make as many jokes about Arsenal as we want, but we try not to kick Dryden about Sunderland because they're quite low in the football pyramid now.
It's a bit hard, isn't it? I mean, I've got to really reach down there to go and like get to them. So you're a bit closer, so I can get to you a bit easier. I'm only little.
it's like a proper unspoken thing, isn't it? Like, it's like someone who's you probably don't kick them when they're down. Like,
No.
he's properly injured man. You don't kick down.
You know, as a
It's not just
physio,
jokes.
if you're that injured, I'm going to treat you, take you off, and look after you. You basically got a concussion in physio, so I'm going to keep a little eye on you for a bit. There's no jokes. You just got a ball in the what's the name's head, so I can pick on you. It's funny, but you've got a concussion. I've got to be very careful with you.
I think Sunderland had a career-ending injury a few years ago. I think so.
Yeah. You never know. We all have hope, don't we? Surgery's improved since then, so you never know.
God, what an analogy for Sunderland. I mean, it's very apt. Like, it's very apt.
So one of the first questions I wanted to kind of ask you, aside from the football one, is like, how did you kind of get into physiotherapy? Because I think when you're 6 or 7 years old and you see the physios come on, you just assume like it's just this guy who just has these like magical powers, and he like puts them over someone's leg, and then it's like healed and they come off, or if not, then they go off completely. But it's so much more complex than that, so much more detailed than that. So how did you kind of get into it generally?
So basically, I kind of come into it in a roundabout way. So I really wanted to be a footballer. I wanted to play for England with David Beckham. And obviously, no one had told me as a little girl it wasn't going to happen. So I tried to play football. I was like, oh, I don't like being kicked. It's really horrible. So I was trying to figure out how I could be in football. And one day, my grandfather, who's from St. Lucia, he had a stroke, unfortunately, while he was on holiday back at home with his family. So I was quite young. I thought, oh, that's Grandad done, sadly. And then when I met him at home, I was like, oh, Grandad, why are you walking? What's going on? I won't do his accent, be pleased to hear. He's like, oh, I had physio. And so I went, what's this physio thing? So I looked into it and I went, oh, this is amazing. Saw the connection to football and went, hang on a minute, I might have hit onto a winner here. So I must have been about 14, 13. From that moment, I went, right, I'm going to get into physio. Went through A levels, all focused on biology and human anatomy kind of work. Went straight into university at 18, and then straight into a job with physio. I was quite driven, really. A bit weird for a 13-year-old from South London, isn't it? You know what the worst thing was? I was in an all-girls school, and they were genuinely shocked and went, "Don't you want to be a hairdresser?" I went, "Not really, miss. I'm not going to lie to you. I want to be a physiotherapist. It sounds awesome." But that's kind of how I got into it, really.
Oh, brilliant. So where did you go to uni out of interest?
I went to East London over in Stratford. Yeah.
East London and Stratford.
I
Yeah,
stayed local. My little brother, he's my little brother. He went as far away as he probably could. I was like, I'm going to live with my auntie in East London. I'm going to stay as close to my mum as I can because she feeds me.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Connor's so basically on a side note, one of my good friends is Ally, our guest today, his sister, and he pretends to listen to all of
You don't call him my sister, honestly.
he pretends to listen to all of our episodes, but I know he doesn't. So I'm hoping today he actually does tune in to this one, which would be great.
I'm in trouble. I was told to not mention his name at all. I've done it already. It's only
Already?
been 4 minutes.
That's brilliant. That's top stuff. I'm glad. His fists will be clenched as he hears his name.
I'm going to call him "He Who Shall Not Be Named" from now on.
Yeah. So, what was the most challenging thing you encountered kind of during your training? Because I'm aware the course is really intense with physio.
I think that was the hardest thing, is that it's a 3-year course. It's obviously quite hard to get into grades wise, but I think it's a proper full-time course. So you're literally going from university. You're in there from 8 until 6 every day. You get the normal Wednesday afternoons, I think it is, off, but I'll be honest, you're studying. If you live with art students, you hate them because they get an hour of lectures and then they're off doing their amazing life. Yeah, see, I would have hated you. I probably would have headbutted you at uni.
I was on the beach. I was on the beach every day.
Yeah, I'd have got a Palastango and just bashed it over your head. It's quite a big textbook for physios out there. But yeah, so that was quite hard. And then also, our course is linked with the NHS, so we do have to do over 1,000 hours of clinical practice. So throughout our degree, you do like a 5-week placement, I think a couple of times a year, where you go into a hospital and you work as a physio underneath other physiotherapists. And I think that for me, as an 18-year-old, I hadn't really experienced much of those upsetting situations that you see. And I'll be honest and say that there were some heartbreaking moments, but it prepares you for the job, because I work in the NHS now still. And that's probably the hardest thing, is that you have to kind of get your head around a lot of work, and a lot of people's lives depend on what you do, you know, metaphorically and physically, sadly. You know.
Yeah, well, I can imagine it's
downbeat that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, we needed the soft, like soft music in the background. But
yeah,
no, I
kitten comes
agree.
out and cheers us all up.
So moving on from that, how did you actually get involved in football? I can imagine it being quite a difficult sphere to kind of enter.
Yeah, so I've always loved football. It's family-wise, we're all football nuts. We used to watch Dream Team on a Sunday night before school. We used to watch Match of the Day on a Saturday evening. That's how our lives all worked. But basically, my brother was getting treated, and he who shall not be named was getting treated by another physio, and he offered to sort of, when I must have been about 20 at the time, so just towards the end of my degree, he offered to take me under his wing for a bit, so I joined him. Alex Glago, I should say his name. Unfortunately, he's passed away since then, sadly. But he took me under, and he mentored me. And then one day, he just said to me, Al, can you meet me at this ground? We're going to look after this team together today. I went, cool, I'll meet you there. I got there, and the minute before I was meant to meet him, he went, yeah, this is your new team. You're good enough now. Off you go. This is your team. Enjoy. And I went, you what? And a load of really Larry Bermondsey boys turned up for Greenwich Borough Football Club, and I was absolutely cacking my pants. But you know what? I never looked back. That was 13 years ago now, something like that. It was ridiculous. But yeah, never looked back. That's how I got into football. I did play it for a little while. I wasn't very good.
so actually, I just had a flashback. He who shall not be named supports Chelsea.
He does.
And he does support Chelsea. And
it's a great shame to the family.
Yeah. And you support West Ham. And I've never actually asked who he shall not be named. But what happened there? What happened with the Chelsea West Ham?
He'll tell you something different, right? When he was younger, there were two things. Number one, there was a boy, he must have been about 4. There was a boy in our street who supported Chelsea, and he loved that kid. He's about 10 years older than him, and he loved him. And he also liked the colour blue, and that's how it happened. He'll tell you about Dennis Wise and all this business and about following them up from the grassroots. No, he liked the colour blue, and there's a kid in our street called Sean that he loved, and he copied him. Yep, Sean. Sean from South London is the reason why he supports Chelsea, and my dad hates him. That Sean from South London. My dad's a Tottenham fan.
No way! God, what a medley of clubs.
I know. Do you know what? My poor mum just sits there going, like, on a derby day. There's many of them in the season now going, I just hate my life. Who's gonna kick off first?
Well, that is a massive combo: Tottenham, West Ham, and Chelsea.
I know.
I can't imagine.
I mean, luckily Tottenham's dropped out a little bit now, so we're all good. It's all calmed down a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. In a few years, they'll be where Dryden's at with Sunderland, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
So talk about how you got involved with the SE Dons, because as Dryden mentioned in the very long introduction, I'm personally a really big fan, and so is my flatmate. We're constantly cheering. He has the hoodie actually, which I'm going to go into a bit later on. Yeah, because I'm going to start talking to you about discounts and merchandise and stuff for myself. That might be off air, Ali. But
it might be off air. I'm going to say you might have to cut out of that bit. Have a chat.
I was going to say it was Etch's birthday on on Thursday, so
happy birthday!
It was
happy birthday, mate! If you'd have said, I'd have got you a shout out from Big G, but it's gone now. Next year, mate.
Next year.
Hang on, anything for the Dons.
Yeah, so how did you get involved with them, just generally?
So it's all through Twitter. So I've got a little bit of a Twitter presence, especially in non-league football. And all these guys that play for Dons all work into the non-league circuit. So I've met them all round and about in the last 13 odd years. And then one day they put Dons had put a tweet out saying we need a physio for a game. A gentleman called Dean Carpenter, who plays for, I think it was Catcham and then Kennywell, something like that. He's also played. I worked with me at Cray Wanderers, where I was at. He said, "Oh, Ali, have a look at this." A couple of people said, "Oh, at little physio, she sees the one for this." Spoke to Ryan Palmer on the phone, and the rest is. He said, "Come do one game," and honestly, I've not left them since. Like a lifetime contract. No, you know what? Once you get into there, they're so inspiring. It's so like, I don't know. It's so like you can't help but be around that sort of atmosphere and around those sort of people. They kind of inspire you to do better.
Energy.
Yeah, I can't. You know, I'll be honest with you guys. I was falling out of love with football a couple of years ago, especially with all like what was going on, and like non-league is difficult, and being a female in non-league is incredibly difficult. Some days I won't go into the. I'm sure you can imagine the things that you hear, but actually, like those guys just gave me my spark and my love of football, and I can't thank them enough for that. Really, I don't think they know that they've done it. It's just that they're so motivational and inspiring as people.
Yeah, that's kind of leading to my next question about like the atmosphere. So when we watch it and we see on the sidelines when you win or lose, it seems really, really like a real big team bubble. It seems really fun to be a part of, and it's quite clear you agree with that, because I want to be part of Dons. Yeah,
I hate them. They're horrible.
No, that's really, really good to hear. So the next kind of question I have is, with the players' injury management, like which I'm sure happens, sometimes you see it in the clips, not always. Like, how involved are you with it? Like, because I think one of the things about physios is we see them on the pitch when someone rolls their ankle or something, but obviously it's so much more than that post when they go off, and that's kind of what we don't know that much about.
Yeah, I think you kind of saw. I'm not want to talk about too much, but the situation with Eriksen's kind of what physios do. We're basically medically trained, so there's two schools of thought with physio. One's that you run on, throw a bit of spray on it, and then everyone gets up and it carries on. But actually, a lot of what we do is sort of prevention of injury. So looking at people who are potentially more prone. So this season with COVID being on and off, they have to do a lot of work around sort of keeping things managed and making sure that those with dodgy tendons are looking after themselves, looking around diet, looking around nutrition, looking around COVID wellness as well. This season's been a nightmare. So players aren't showing symptoms and coming into the squad with symptoms, and you've got to quarantine the whole lot of them, that sort of stuff. But when they come off, what you do a lot of work with like immediate first aid, so like management of swelling, management of injury, escalation to hospital or GP, whatever's more appropriate. But you might also do a lot of work around sort of then the rehab and strengthening. We all hope we don't meet an Eriksen when we go onto the pitch. Unfortunately, it happens. It's quite rare, touch wood. But a lot of what we do is unseen. I think that's a good thing because no one wants a busy physio, right? If you see me on the episode every week, it means something bad's happening, something's gone wrong. If I'm quiet, it means that the team are safe, and that's ultimately quite good. And I've got a really horrible accent. You don't want to hear this on Don's ear. Chris, you're going to win 3-0 today. You don't really want that, do you? Like, try and stay off camera.
No, that's probably grassroots, man.
Yeah.
No, obviously, at like a large football club, there's a lot of specialisation in terms of these roles. But obviously, the non-league football club, they possibly go to you for all of that kind of aspects of the nutrition side and everything. So I bet you're dragged left, right, and centre.
Non-league, you are the jack of all trades. Honestly, you're their mental health counsellor. You're their mum. You're their sister. You're their chef sometimes. You're their everything. Because if you imagine somewhere, we use Sunderland as an example. So you've probably got some. It's an example. You'll have like 4 different physios there. You've got academy physios and you've got first team, and you've probably got 23s and reserves and everything else. You've got doctors, you've got masseuses, you've got sports therapists, you've probably got sports scientists there monitoring their readings from their player tech best, things like that. And in a non-league club, you've just got you, and you kind of become all of that. It can be really, really hard. I mean, I don't mind it because I'm not really known any different, and I think I'm quite a well-rounded physio. I think my background is A&E, resus, and hospital-based work. So whatever you can throw it at me. I'll give it a good whack at dealing with it. But yeah, it's not the easiest job in the world. I think a lot of physios are pulling out now, sadly, from non-league for that reason, that it's a lot of work and you don't get much for it. And sometimes I've won leagues where I haven't even got a medal at the end of the season. And it's it is what it is. You're kind of an unsung hero, but rugby pays more. That's the way it works, isn't it? Or hockey. Yeah, but you go to the other clubs and you've got more progression, and whereas sometimes in football it's a bit stagnant. Sometimes you don't really tend to work up to where you need to go. If you're lucky, you get to the top, but football's very competitive. Everyone loves football. Everyone's passionate. Everyone wants to be involved in it.
Yeah.
But grassroots is a bit different because the physio and grassroots is just starting. Like there's a couple of us around. I think Kenningwell's got a physio. Beatty's, I think, we've got a physio now. But it's just starting now, so we're almost like a bit more like pioneers again, like I was when I joined as one of the first girls in non-league. So it's nice to be a pioneer, isn't
it? Yeah, very much so. I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So when you talk about prevention, like, so obviously when we talk about these massive clubs beforehand, they, there's all this data and advice which goes to the manager or the first team coach, and they then make decisions. How do you best place or put into practice that prevention with the Don? So let's say one of the players has high risk of a potential injury. Like how do you go about approaching the player or the team in terms of maybe this guy shouldn't play this week for a variety of reasons?
So I think it's always about knowledge of the game. So, like if you've got a cup final coming up, you've got a very big upward battle with that player. I always think it's worth discussing it with the player, having a really honest conversation and saying, look, this is what happens if you play. This is what happens if you don't play. Ultimately, the choice is between you and me. You might involve the gaffer in it, and you might say to like JR, look, so-and-so is feeling a little bit off today. Can we maybe start him from the bench, or have we got opportunity to rest him today? Dons have got a really big squad, so I'm quite lucky in some respects. JR not so lucky because he's got to try and rotate these guys all the time.
Yeah.
As a physio, I'm from my point of view, I think it's always just worth having an honest discussion and saying, like, these are the pros and cons of doing something. We're all adults. We can all have an adult discussion. We can all decide things together. There's some that I will just say no to. So, for example, head injuries. They're going to be a straight, like, look, I'm going to say no. If you want to play against what I've said, you're going to sign a waiver, which I would hope would put them off. You'd be shocked. It wouldn't put a lot of them off.
Yeah.
But, I think it's about knowledge of the game. Like, if you know you've got a massive game coming up and that you need this player fit, you might have a discussion Monday, look, if he plays for this game, you're going to lose him for 2 games. If he wants to do that and the player wants to do that, then you know what, you make it work. People don't tend to argue with me anymore. I don't know why. I think it's really intimidating. All 5'3" of me. It's like the big lion mane. That's what it is. You think Big G is the most frightening person at the Dons? It's not. It's me. I make Big G quaver when I get upset.
What would you say is the most difficult injury you've encountered at the Dons? Because there's some, because I think one of those things as well is, in professional football, all these injuries happen, and the physio and the feedback and the way they can get back to fitness is a lot easier. But non-league can be so difficult. I've had friends that have had really serious injuries, and because they have to go through the NHS, which takes time, and the physio takes time, and everything takes a little bit longer, it can be a really, really long road to recovery. And there's been some members of the Dons, I don't know when they got injured, where they do the ACL, and it's such a long road to recovery, because it's just so much harder when you don't have some surgeon in Germany who can operate on you that evening, and 10,000 physios who can be at your house in 10 minutes, etc. So what would you say is the most difficult injury you faced during your time there?
You say that's funny, but I think it's probably going to be Jack Dino for the fans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think his injury happened. A lot of them play for both 2 teams. They've got a Saturday team and they got us. So that's probably so he got injured on the Saturday team, and luckily I know their physio super well. We're really good mates, me and Courts. And he done an ACL, dislocated his patella, but it took us a long time to get that diagnosis. And what had happened in the meantime was that he'd left his knee in a straight position because he'd been told to. And physios and surgeons will always have massive differing opinions about movement of joints. Now, obviously, sometimes you can't move things, but I'd always argue that if it's not detrimental to the injury, you should be starting to exercise and do very gentle movements early, because that way you stop these secondary problems of like tendons stop moving and fingers come stiff. So he actually had a completely extended knee, and I had to work with him for about a month before his surgery to get him to bend that knee, because they couldn't do the surgery. And I told him that, I said, look, geez, you've got to start bending this knee. Like, I don't care what the surgeon said. Long it off, get that sling off. You're going to start moving this knee. But he's playing again now, which is amazing. So
he is.
I think for the Dons, it's probably my ACL. I think Az got injured quite recently. His scans have just come back. He's doing really well with rehab, actually. But they're a bit inconclusive. So yeah, I think I'm touch wood. I'm quite lucky that Dons. I haven't had that many awful, horrendous ones. They're mainly ACLs, which are horrendous for players. But as a physio, you just have to get them off the pitch.
Yeah, it's not as graphic as like a big leg break, but obviously it's like
no,
one of the
I've had
worst
them in
in terms of
non-league.
career.
I've had a couple of them in non-league, but I'm touch wood. I'm quite a lucky physio. I've not had many horrendous ones.
I got carted off the pitch at university for broke my leg, so I know what it's like to be.
Was it double? Was it such a gross physio? Yeah. Did it come out the skin? Was it great?
No, it wasn't actually. It was actually really clean, but it was a double leg break. And the worst bit was I was on the floor, and I don't know if you would have been possibly to the pitches in Norwich. If you might not have been, you've been to the university.
I've been to a couple, not the university pitches, but I've been to a couple of Norwich pitches.
Basically, when I was on the floor cropped, I could see the hospital. But because of the way the roads are, I had to wait like 25-30 minutes for an ambulance. I was sitting there like screaming. I was just like, this is the worst thing ever.
You know what? That's the grassroots problem, though, isn't it? Is that we all go on about the discussion in the last week has been very valid. I'm going to make it sound invalid. I'm not doing that at all. But about you've got to have defibs and you've got to have highly qualified people, and then you go to Hackney Marshes on a Sunday and see that many games with that many players, and there won't even be a first aider there. There's nothing there to help get you off that pitch. You are stuffed if you do something on there. So even a simple sprain could be a massive problem in a situation like that. That's the challenge and the beauty of grassroots for me. I quite like it.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I
like,
suppose the Ericsson thing. Obviously, he plays at a very high intensity. I mean, he's playing arguably the highest standard of the game, and they play so often. That's been like a massive touch point afterwards, isn't it? People
yeah.
saying,
Do you
"Oh,
know
we
what?
shouldn't play so much."
This is going to sound horrible, and this is a proper physio answer. He's very lucky because he had a
Of
heart
course.
attack. Essentially, he
Mm.
died in a
Yeah.
place where there were that many medically trained people to assist him. Like, if he'd have been in the middle of if he'd have been driving his car in M25, his chances are suddenly very different, aren't they?
Yeah,
Do you know what I
exactly. Very
mean?
much
Can you
so.
imagine that? Like, how lucky
Yeah.
he is it happened there, and not in the middle of Hackney Marshes.
But that's what I was going to say. Yeah, if it happened there, and you think like, even though it's more intense what he's doing, the people
Mm.
who are playing football at the Hackney Marshes aren't as fit as he is.
Yeah,
So
the risk is
actually,
different.
the chances are
Mm,
arguably not so dissimilar that
mm.
someone in Hackney Marshes could get that. But then what happens if they
Mm.
do? That they haven't got the
Well,
staff around,
all you do
physios.
really, to be honest, Michael, is someone has to just be brave, jump on that chest, and start doing CPR until help comes. That's the
Yeah.
long and short of the discussion. And
Mm.
I think every single footballer in this country should be trained to do CPR because if their
Yeah.
teammates go down, you should be able to help them.
Mm.
Mm.
That's
Definitely.
my
Yeah.
viewpoint on the matter as a physio.
Well, I
You
don't see
know,
any reason why not.
because you
Like, it's
never
not
know. I
like,
might have run to the toilet for 5 minutes and something happens. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not always
yeah,
going to be there keeping my
definitely.
eye on things. You know,
Mm.
I wish
So
I
this is
could be there. I can't.
kind of talking about injuries and stuff like that.
Mm,
So when we talk about the Dons just generally, how receptive are players to recovery and treatment? So obviously, when you have a big surgery or you have a
mm,
massive injury, you can't say, Ali, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to straighten my knee because I don't really agree with that. It's more about guys that have loads of niggles, and that's
mm,
playing rugby myself quite a lot. It's one of those things where you get a lot of advice from physios, and you see some players that will follow it to the book, where
mm.
it's like, this is what I need to do over the next 3 weeks to get to here. And then you get someone who's like, well, I took some ibuprofen yesterday, and
Mm.
now today my leg doesn't hurt as much, therefore I can play. And it's more, how receptive do you find the players are at the Dons, or just
Um,
generally, and how do you try and combat that if they're not so receptive, to try and get them on board?
I think the Dons are pretty good. So
Mm,
they tend to trust me implicitly, which I'm is very thankful for. I
yeah.
mean, you're going to get some players where they're going to be a bit like, you know what, my experience is different to yours, Al.
Mm,
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do, and I think you try and support them through that. I think you
hmm
have to. I'd like to say my experience speak for itself. I'm normally always right in the end, and I don't
mm,
mind saying I told you so if it
mm,
happens. But you know what? Sometimes, you know, say you've got a player who's played with a dodgy hamstring, they've done a run and it's gone. Then you know what you have to sit and say to them? Look, okay, we thought this might happen. It's happened. How do we move on from this
hmm
so it doesn't happen again? That's the approach that I take. Is that, you know
Mm.
what? Because I told you so's are lovely and they're great, and I feel better when I've said it, but it don't help anybody.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think my approach to the Dons is that it's mutual respect, isn't it? And I respect them, they respect me. We'll try and make it work when we can. If we can't make it work, I'm going to be honest with you, and we're going to work together and be friends. You know, big Dons family and all that.
Mm.
You know, and if not, I'm going to write a diss track about you and release it on YouTube. That's a
Yeah,
joke. I cannot do any of that stuff. I only got to Donny, not me.
Well, I think
And
your brother
Addy.
can.
he
I almost
he
said
he
they're not going to get trouble for.
he he
I almost,
who shall not be named. We won't talk about him.
yeah,
But yeah, no, Don Strapsy released a freestyle really recently, Dryden.
it's good, wasn't
You should
it?
check it out. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it, to be fair.
Mm.
Mm.
So the kind of one of the final questions I have is, how do you keep on things that change, or on top of things that change in the physio industry? Because I assume it's one of those things that is constantly evolving in terms of like ways to treat players, or like,
Mm.
you know, I remember when there's a big thing like maybe a decade ago where players started going into those freezing chambers, and now loads of clubs do that. And it's just kind of like, how do you keep on top of it all, like
Um,
when it's continuously progressing?
you have to just constantly be learning and reading and getting into things and doing new courses. It's a job that you kind of never become an expert in it. You're always sort of chasing the latest evidence.
Yeah.
Um, it's experience. Sometimes, like, you know, players go to a cryo chamber, and I ask them, "What was it like? How did you find it? What happened with your injury?" You know, sometimes it's a bit of experience-based stuff.
Mm,
You learn from other physios. You just share information. Yeah, it's a job where you just never stop learning, which is quite fun, really, and frustrating because you feel like you've got it, and suddenly it's all changed. A few years ago, someone released a paper saying that warm-ups didn't work, and that isn't what the paper suggested, but that's what the
mm,
Daily Mail took from it.
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
And the
front
uphill
page.
battle I've had ever since that paper came out has been ridiculous because they do work. It is that what you should do is do active warm up. What they were saying, not like
Yeah.
just don't bother and run out on the pitch and then pull your hamstring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's good for my finances. If you want to keep doing that, guys, feel free. And then my PayPal is available to assist you once you pull the muscle.
Yeah, but you'd be out of a job if they didn't. So
I know. I mean, I think a physio may have written that as like, oh, I'll just put it out there, and then we'll get a bit of business out there. It wasn't me that wrote it. It was me.
And I think one of the final things I wanted to wrap up on is what happened, right, Ali, to the magic sponge? Because what's happened now is you see the sprays have come out, and that's really well said and done. But what happened to the magic sponge? I remember when I was 7 playing at where was I playing? I had a very bad football career. I wasn't very good, Ali, just as a disclaimer. But
I
was
mean, you're an egg
playing.
chaser for a start. What worries me.
But yeah, my young career, it didn't quite take off as expected. And I was playing when I was like 7 at some place, and I bruised my knee. I remember the yellow magic sponge came out, but I think since then it's kind of faded into the background. So where is it, Ali, and can it make a
So
reappearance?
that comes from the old school, what we called sponge men. So that
Yeah.
is basically some geezer called Kevin, who's frankly
yeah.
got hairier knuckles than he should. Used to run on a pitch with a bucket and just fling it at them when they're unconscious and go, Bill, you got only 20 minutes left of the first half. Just get up. That's where it comes from. And basically that's where it's the idea that a coach or someone who was a sponge man would do physiotherapy. I mean, I
Yeah.
like to think it's got a little bit more high tech since then, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with a bit of cold water and a bit of a short, sharp shock somebody's playing when they roll the bat a bit. Get up.
Yeah.
Get up.
I suppose it's like psychological as well, isn't it? Like some things you might get there and realize, okay, this person actually hasn't got a bad injury.
Yeah.
Let's just hold the sponge on. We'll pretend we've done some serious maneuver.
You know what though? Sometimes it sounds really silly. They just want me to have a look at it, make sure it's not broken.
Yeah.
So I've been doing. I work for London FA now, doing their cup finals just to cover it as medical emergency. And the second that teams find out that there's a physio on site, they go down a lot more, basically, because they're like,
actually.
"Oh, there's a physio here. She'll run on and deal with it." And sometimes it's just reassurance, which is nice, I suppose. But it's a lot of running, and I get tired. But it is what it. I mean, it's nice to feel needed, isn't it? I suppose that's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You must have so many coaches that actually are that like kind of quasi physio, or so many.
Yeah.
Actually, the best analogy is like when I used to play as a kid, and it'd be someone's parents it wouldn't even be like trained in first aid, but like he'd been to a course at work like 3 years ago, and he was the guy that always used to come on.
Oh, honestly, do you know what I love? I love when you get a manager, coach, or someone else who goes, "I had that injury. That's not broken." And you're like, what?
Yeah, oh god, yeah.
I had that. I tell you what I did. I got a bucket of hot water and a bucket of cold water, and I put it in every 5 minutes to each one. I went, what? Sorry, I am here. I can treat them. The geezer's legs hanging off, like. But you know what? It's a nice thing. I mean, I've been proven wrong by a couple of people like that, so I'm not going to get into it too much. But I go, it's definitely broken and it's bruised. I go, oh, definitely bruised and it's been broken. It happens.
Yeah, people always convince themselves they've got like a fracture and it's just like a bruise or like a.
The best one I've seen is a guy convinced it's broken because his sock was torn. I was like, no, look, there's not any blood on it. Oh, it's broken. I'm like, look, you can put weight on it. You can come on.
Yeah, come on, now. All right.
Look at me. I don't want to get. I had another guy where he thought he'd done his ACL, and he wouldn't let me touch him. He was screaming. Got the stretcher on, and then I got him indoors. Once he calmed down, he actually was completely fine, and he walked out and drove home. And I was like, it was so embarrassing.
Yeah, I bet he was down the pub. 3 hours later as well.
Thing, because all the lads just never let it go. They were like, "How have you done your ACL on your back for the midweek, mate?" Like, honestly, I won't name him, but it was I've got a picture, and we all looked so worried about him. We were all so concerned, and he was absolutely fine. That's the nice way round, of course, but it's not a bad one. But I remember thinking, like, "Oh, mate, how have you done an ACL? You're back in 3 hours." It really cracked me up. It was really funny.
Yeah, even Patrick Schick yesterday for Czech Republic, when he took that penalty, he stepped up, he looked like he'd been hit by a bus, but he buried it, to be fair. But like that was like a like a proper professional footballer example of someone playing through the I don't know, playing barrier, or he looked like he broke his nose.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, at non-league level, people
You know
love to
what? Some
self-diagnose.
footballers have got amazing pain thresholds. Some of them have got rubbish ones. Like they just got to have a fingernail cut and then they're done. But do you know what? That's about knowing your player. Though some players you know who you can push and who you know actually know what. I don't care what's wrong with him. He's not playing for 2 weeks because he's that kind of personality. Like let him get his head back together again. But it is what it is.
Yeah. So Ali, yeah, I think we've come to a conclusion now. I've run out of time, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, and good luck for. So the SE Don season, is that? Oh, they've just concluded, haven't they? They might have concluded.
I understand. She's a bit like I'm not in the group chat, so I'm out of a loop at the minute. But I understand we have got 2 games left. We have 1 point to get to win the league. And I understand the team from Sunday are pulled out of the game and they can't play midweek. So that would assume we then get the points from that. But I know that the boys are very keen to go at the home ground on the Sunday and finish it off properly with a game, because no one wants to win like that, right?
Yeah,
I do. I don't care. I just want a medal and some prosecco, to be honest. That's all that I want.
No, but at non-league level, like that is what people live for. Like those days when you win the league on a nice summer's day.
You can't beat it. And I think doing the London Cup finals at the moment, I've seen 4 teams win a cup final, and watching them enjoy it brings a bit of joy to your life. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because they're part-time. Like that, they're doing it for that reason.
It's amazing.
So...
I got to go to the London Cup final. I know Dons were kicked out of it, but I was the physio for that cup final, and it was just granted Grind had to win it, who beat us, so we technically kind of won it in my book. But it's lovely to see that joy from them winning it, because it means something to them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, absolutely.
And also, before we finally wrap up, there's one more point as well. When you next see the SE Dons, give my kind regards to Grinaldo, RP7, SK, Big G.
I can only hope he's soaked up the last time.
Yeah, Mons.
You know what, guys? You have to come to a game, I think, at this point, surely.
Really?
Right?
I actually really want to. I think
Etches is pitching for a starting position on the team.
Where do you play? Where do you play, mate? Don't say in goal, because I'm not fighting for it.
That's a tough question.
I mean, I can rule somebody out for you if you want. I can just go, RP7, done his toenail. He just be out forward. Put you in. I don't mind.
If I attempted an RP7 step over, I'd be on the ground in pain. I think that's what would happen.
You know what? I would love to do something. We could teach you to do that. Set the home with the boys. it takes a long time to do it. It's like a beach ball, and like 10 minutes later, he's still doing a step over, but he still gets past the guy. It's ridiculous. I don't know.
One-trick ponies, they always work. They always work because they're so used to it. They're so skilled.
He's got more than one trick though, because he's going to kick.
Right.
That's just his best trick.
Yeah, there's a few skillful players in that team. I'll have to be honest, but no, thanks so much for coming on, Ali. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I actually will come. I think I am going to come to a Dons game. I'm going to buy. They got this new T-shirt which is out, which I'm thinking I'm going to get. And then once I'm
still plugging.
Yeah, still plugging. Yeah, we'll get a sponsorship with them sometime soon, I think. So thanks so much for coming on, Ali. It's been absolutely fantastic.
That's no problem at all. Thank you, guys. It's been absolutely lovely speaking to you.
Yeah, cheers.